back to the overall bigger point of the book here, and just sort of the levels of disagreement on Hillary Clinton from people who really support her to the other spectrum who don't support her. And again, okay, so for me, and again, I'm very happy to have this conversation because you are friends here. So
yeah.
For me, okay, obviously, let's just lay down a baseline of stuff here. So obviously, if it's Hillary versus Trump or Cruz or Rubio or any of the Republicans, obviously I'd rather have Hillary over them. I'd rather have a competent centrist Democrat over a far right wing anybody, right? So
exactly.
So, however, so when talking about sexism in Hillary Clinton, I do believe there are many major differences as a progressive between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. I mean, if someone were to say something along the lines of okay, I like Joe Biden more than I like Hillary Clinton, and I think Biden would be better. That, I think, is actually a load of crap because I think Biden and Hillary are both centrist Democrats, and they both are pretty much about the same. If you really like Barack Obama's policies, you're right in line with, I think, Hillary Clinton's policies. But I think Bernie is definitely further left in many kind of key areas for me. What is your kind of thought on that? Because I'm kind of curious on your take when it comes to...
I totally agree with you. Mm-hmm. I love Bernie. I've watched him from afar. I haven't really paid super close attention to him until he threw his hat into this race. Every once in a while he would do something that would grab headlines. But yeah, definitely I think that he has far more left, far a true progressive, and for a long time. I do think that in some sense he's a little tone deaf sometimes with some of the current conversations. But I think that I was just talking about this the other day. Sometimes I think that Bernie's challenges is that he's been in this battle this so long that there was a clip going around about how he basically has been having the same stump speech for 40 years. Well, we've been working on the same issues for 40 years. Those sorts of things. But yeah, so I love Bernie. If it was Bernie versus Trump, yeah, totally Bernie. But I'm also try to be a bit of a pragmatist and think that there might be a better way to sway some of those moderate voters towards Hillary's camp than Bernie's. For some people, I think that he's too lefty to win a general election.
I would respectfully disagree. I don't know. We certainly, in my opinion, we certainly haven't had an actual lefty as a candidate, as a national candidate, in a long, long time, if ever. And I don't know. It worries me in 2016, where right now it looks like there's a very good chance Donald Trump might actually be the nominee here. So we have a person who's a maniac, racist, sexist monster. But his campaign is all based on this sort of right-wing populism where he's telling people, you know what, you're getting screwed over. Everything, the system is screwing you over, which it is. But Donald Trump goes and, whose fault it is? It's the fault of the Latinos. It's the fault of the Muslims. That's their fault. And so he channels the people's actual knowing that they're being screwed over into hatred towards, completely innocent people. Whereas Bernie's, his entire political career is actually channeling anger towards where it probably should be steered, which is the very, very rich. And I think people know that they're getting screwed over. And I think that's actually a message that I believe, if it's actually given a national platform, would resonate with people. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you've positioned what a Bernie Trump campaign would look like is this battle of everyone's getting screwed over, who do we blame? And I forget where I read it before, but there's something about, I grew up very working class, and there's always this expectation that one day I too could grow up to be rich. And so I think that for some people it is hard to blame the rich. for their lot in life because they aspire to be rich one day. Mm-hmm. And then to be rich, you then have to take on that blame, where it's a lot easier to other people who are different than you, who are just plainly different, who are new to the country, have different skin color, those sorts of things. But yeah, I think that a Bernie Trump campaign would just be intense in terms of who do we blame. It really would come down to that, and who could sell a solution the best. And maybe I'm a little, most of the time I try to be optimistic about our country, but I think it's easier for people to blame their new neighbor next door than it is to rightly put the blame on the bankers and on Wall Street.
Yeah, no, I was just in Nebraska for the holidays where I'm from. There's a lot of reasons to be depressed. You live in Chicago. I used to live in Chicago. I live in Boston. It's like, and there's horrible people in New England. They're like, Trump has a lot of supporters here. Like, he drew like 10,000 people out in Worcester, which is like about an hour plus away from Boston. Right. So there's bad people everywhere. But I think it's like one of the things that Hillary supporters often say is they think she is actually more electable, and I'm not entirely sure about that. I'd like to have your opinion on this. So like in my thoughts, okay, assuming the election goes down like it has in recent history, we're going to have two states essentially deciding who the president is, right? It's like if the traditional red states traditionally continue to vote red, if the blue states vote blue, we're looking at Ohio and Florida and maybe a couple other states that actually decide who our leader is going to be. In those states, I mean, in kind of a blue-collar state like Ohio, does someone who actually legitimately has a long history of caring about workers' rights and caring about little people, I think Bernie has a better chance in Ohio than necessarily Hillary does, just when you tie in Hillary's Wall Street ties, when you tie in NAFTA, there's a lot of things that I think in certain states where the election's probably going to be decided, I think Bernie actually has a more legitimate shot than, and I think Hillary could win in those states. I'm not saying that she's definitely going to lose, but I think Bernie's a better candidate in these like Rust Belt states that have been, screwed over by outsourcing and having these plants close and everybody losing their jobs. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think you have some great points, and it definitely could go down that way. When I think about who's going to turn this election in those states, I am really definitely thinking about it's going to be women and women of color, particularly women of color. So not that they're not going to have those same economic thoughts, but I think that riding the anti-NAFTA wave plays to a white male voting base, which could go either way, but if it's Trump, Hillary, Trump, anybody, I tend to think that they might go to Trump, because that's just, they've been going increasingly GOP over the last few years, whereas the growth for the Democratic Party seems to be in communities of color, and I think Hillary can speak to that a bit better, despite all of the the other some of the policies that she's handled.